World War II is a conflict people have studied from all kinds of angles and perspectives, many times offering up the commonly known facts in new ways. From myths that turn out to be false to those that are shockingly accurate, reassessment of the global conflict remains ongoing. Then there are the facts that seem to show up out of nowhere. New details and insights that weren't in our textbooks, haven't appeared on our screens, and are just completely novel. It's amazing how there seems to be no end to the information out there about World War II, much of which we can't believe we hadn't learned earlier. Take a look at some of the details we just found out about, and comment below and tell us the ones that are new to you too. Number 1. Gino Bartali used his cycling fame to transport messages for the Italian resistance. Italian cyclist Gino Bartali was internationally renowned, having won the Giro d'Italia in 1936 and 1937, as well as the Tour de France in 1938. As early as 1938, he showed defiance against Benito Mussolini and his fascist government, refusing to dedicate his Tour de France win to the leader. After Germany occupied northern and central Italy in 1943, Bartali took to the road to protect Jews in the country. He rode between cities like Firenze, Florence, and Assisi to deliver communications between members of the underground Italian resistance. He hid the messages in his bike frame and handlebars, but when Bartali was stopped and searched, he specifically asked that his bicycle not be touched, since the different parts were very carefully calibrated to achieve maximum speed. In addition to traversing Italy as part of the resistance movement, Bartali personally hid one of his Jewish friends, Giacomo Goldenberg, and his family at his home near Florence. Giacomo's son Giorgio recalled what it was like to be in Bartali's cellar, where he and his family remained safe until Florence was liberated in August 1944. It was very small. A door gave way onto a courtyard, but I couldn't go out because that would run the risk of me being seen by the tenants of the nearby apartment buildings. The four of us slept on a double bed. My father never went out, while my mother often went out with 2 flasks to get water from some well. Another son, Andrea, explained that his father never saw his actions as heroic. When people praised him, the elder Bartali would respond, "No, I want to be remembered for my sporting achievements. Real heroes are others, those who have suffered in their soul, in their heart, in their spirit, in their mind, for their loved ones. Those are the real heroes. I'm just a cyclist." Number 2. William Overstreet Jr. flew a fighter plane between the legs of the Eiffel Tower. William Overstreet Jr., an American pilot in the 357th Fighter Group, found himself in a dogfight over France during the spring of 1944. Piloting a P-51B Mustang, also called a Berlin Express, he reportedly chased a Messerschmitt Bf 109 as it headed toward the skies above Paris. He fired at the German plane, hitting it numerous times before it flew under the Eiffel Tower. Overstreet, in his own words, followed, "I was right behind him, right under the Eiffel Tower with him, and when he pulled up, I did get him. But listen, that's a huge space. As soon as he was disabled, I ducked down just over the river, a smaller target for the Germans, and I followed the river until I was away from Paris." The sight of Overstreet flying low over the city was said to have inspired French resistance troops and citizens alike, leading to what U.S. Army chaplain pastor Jeff Clemens called an uprising in defiance of the Germans for a period of 3 days. Number 3. Georgi de Hevesy dissolved 2 gold Nobel Prize medals to keep them from the Nazis. In 1933, scientists Niels Bohr and Georgi de Hevesy received 2 gold Nobel Prize medals from Jewish colleagues in Germany. The winners, Max von Laue and James Frank, sent the awards to the duo in Denmark to keep them from falling into the hands of German authorities. When Germany invaded Denmark in 1940, the medals were again within the reach of the Third Reich. An added concern was that the names of von Lau and Frank were engraved on the backs of the awards. Should those be discovered, it would be clear that the scientists had dispatched them to Denmark, violating the law against sending gold out of Germany. At first, according to de Hevesy, he thought about burying the medals, but fear of them being discovered sent him down another path. I decided to dissolve it. While the invading forces marched in the streets of Copenhagen, I was busy dissolving Lauer's and also James Frank's medals. After the war, the gold was recovered, and the Nobel Foundation generously presented Lauer and Frank with new Nobel medals. De Hevesy used aqua regia, a mix of 3 parts hydrochloric acid and 1 part nitric acid. After the gold dissolved, which de Hevesy described as a difficult process, he shelved the solution. When Nazis searched the lab, they were none the wiser of the dissolved precious metal in jars nearby. The gold was later recovered from the mixture. Number 4. Mel Brooks disarmed landmines on the Western Front. Director, actor, and all-around funny man Mel Brooks, born Melvin Kaminsky, served as a combat engineer during World War II, where he took part in the Battle of the Bulge and carried out reconnaissance operations in Germany. Of the experience, he later said, "I was a combat engineer. Isn't that ridiculous? The 2 things I hate most in this world are combat and engineering." Between November 1944 and May 1945, Brooks was tasked with deactivating landmines as a member of the 1104th Engineering Combat Battalion, 78th Infantry Division. As men on the front lines, Brooks and his fellow soldiers found themselves face to face with German forces on several occasions. Brooks reportedly entertained soldiers on the battlefield, singing songs and trying to keep things light, because otherwise we'd all get hysterical, and that kind of hysteria. It's not like sinking, it's like slowly taking on water, and that's the panic. Number 5. The US airdropped pianos to troops on the battlefield. During World War II, Steinway and Sons stopped making its traditional pianos, largely because the materials they needed were shifted to the war effort. The company didn't shut down production entirely, however. It made coffins and parts for military transports. Steinway was also contracted by the War Production Board to make pianos that could be sent into battle. Called Victory Verticals or GI Steinways, the pianos were small, sturdy uprights, painted olive drab and shipped by cargo vessels and transport planes to military theaters around the world. Steinway made about 3,000 Victory Verticals in 1942 and 1943, instruments that parachuted with tuning tools and instructions. The arrival of a Victory Vertical was a welcomed gift in war. In a letter home from North Africa, dated May 6, 1943, U.S. Army PV sheet, Kenneth Cranes told his mother, "2 nights past, we received welcome entertainment when a jeep pulling a small wagon came to camp. The wagon contained a light system and a Steinway piano, Sice. It is smaller and painted olive green, just like the jeep. We all got a kick out of it and sure had fun after meals when we gathered around the piano to sing. I slept smiling, and even today, I'm humming a few of the songs we sang." Number 6. Germany only had 1 dock that could service its largest ships. The dry dock at Saint-Nazaire in France was the lone facility where the Nazis could bring their 2 battleships, the Bismarck and Tirpitz. Located on the Loire estuary, the shipyard had been built to accommodate ocean liners, but once France fell to Germany, it became a strategic stronghold along the Atlantic Wall. Germany seized Saint-Nazaire in 1940, and the Bismarck was sunk in 1941, leaving the Tirpitz as a major target for Allied forces. Winston Churchill reportedly said, "The destruction, or even crippling of this ship, is the greatest event at sea at the present time. No other target is comparable to it. The whole strategy of the war turns at this period on this ship." To take out the Tirpitz, the Allies went after Saint-Nazaire. In 1942, Operation Chariot was launched to raid the facility, initiated by the explosive-packed HMS Campbelltown, ramming the gates and opening up the facility to British troops. Of the 611 men who participated for the British, 169 perished and 32 were taken a prisoner. It worked, however, and the massive explosion unleashed by Campbelltown rendered the dock out of commission. Number 7. The soda drink Fanta was invented to fill the Coca-Cola void in Germany. Germany's first bottle of Coca-Cola was produced in 1929, and by the mid-1930s, the company's popularity in the country was on the rise. Coca-Cola was present at soccer games, bike racing events, and the 1936 Olympic Games, all part of the American company's strategy to use sports as a means by which to introduce Coca-Cola to spread the word worldwide. With the rise of the Third Reich, Coca-Cola GmbH, the German subsidiary, devoted itself to becoming a drink for all Germans, selling itself to the entire Volk. By 1939, the head of Coca-Cola GmbH, Max Keith, stated, "I am sure that each member of the Coca-Cola family is aware of his responsibility to Volk and fatherland, because the name and drink Coca-Cola is now and forever firmly anchored in the hearts of millions throughout the Reich." The outbreak of war, however, presented a problem for Coca-Cola. They'd created demand, but once embargoes were in place, Coca-Cola could no longer get the ingredients to make the classic drink. Keith and Coca-Cola shifted to using local resources, ultimately developing a new beverage in the process. At first, Coca-Cola in Germany was made from leftovers, depending on what the company could get. Once beet sugar was introduced, the drink tasted better than other beverages on the market and received a new name, Fanta, short for the German word for fantasy. It was bottled in a distinct container, didn't have the colorful look it would later get, and was used for cooking as much as for drinking. Fanta was briefly discontinued after the war. In 1955, Coca-Cola reintroduced what most people would consider Fanta now with Fanta Orange, which was first produced and sold in Italy and introduced to the US in 1960. Number 8. Project Habakkuk attempted to build aircraft carriers made out of ice. Project Habakkuk was the Allied plan to use pykrete, a mixture of 14% sawdust and 86% frozen water, to build an aircraft carrier that could effectively combat German U-boats. Pykrete melted slower than simple ice and could still float, ideal for creating heavy ships. Because it was so hard, impervious to bullets and axes wielded by strong men, it would also be resistant to enemy fire. Developed by Jeffrey Pike, pykrete was put to the test in front of Winston Churchill, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and other chief military officials in 1943. They were impressed, and Project Habakkuk was a go. Engineers designed a ship that would require nearly 2 million tons of the compound. Building a prototype in Canada revealed some additional challenges to building pykrete ships. They would need cork insulation and a system of tubes to channel cold air, and the pykrete itself would require a massive storage facility. In the end, the US Navy finally decided that Habakkuk was a false prophet and sank to the bottom of Patricia Lake with the melting prototype, taking her secrets with her. Number 9. Hundreds of paradummies called Ruperts were used as D-Day decoys. Developed by the British, paradummies were at the heart of Operation Titanic, one of many initiatives designed to confuse German forces. In anticipation of the D-Day landing on June 6, 1944, dummies named Rupert, British slang for dull, middle or upper-class junior officers, landed behind enemy lines. The Ruperts consisted of burlap, rubber and sand. They measured about 3 feet tall and were designed to explode when they landed to simulate the sound of gunfire. As many as 500 Ruperts were dropped near the beaches of Normandy late on June 5, 1944, alongside a gramophone reel parachuters set up to mimic the sound of men talking. Those same parachuters then fired pistols to create the illusion of Allied forces in the vicinity, distracting German soldiers who missed the initial D-Day landings the next morning. Number 10. The Allies had an entire ghost army. Equipped with inflatable tanks, fake armaments, and artificial sound effects, the Ghost Army developed out of the collective efforts of artists, engineers, and soldiers alike. Officially known as the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, the Ghost Army was, according to the National World War II Museum, the first mobile, multimedia, tactical deception unit in U.S. Army history. From 1944 to 1945, the traveling roadshow of deception that was the Ghost Army engaged in roughly 24 campaigns in France, Germany, and Italy. In March 1945, as the U.S. Ninth Army approached the Rhine River, the Ghost Army drew the Germans away, allowing Allied forces to cross. One member of the 23rd, Sergeant Robert Tompkins, wrote in his diary about the event, "Heard that Patton crossed the Rhine yesterday. Colonel Schrader just came in with report that we had started heavy bombing and artillery barrage last night in Fake Crossing, and British and Canadians crossed. Hardly any opposition. Generals who viewed our stuff from air yesterday claimed a great deal of credit for this deceptive move goes to us." The Ghost Army became known to the public during the 1980s, but wasn't declassified until the 1990s. In 2022, its members were awarded Congressional Gold Medals. And number 11, Hiroo Onoda didn't stop fighting for Japan until 1974. After Japan surrendered in 1945, not everyone was willing to accept defeat. Hiroo Onoda, for example, spent 3 decades on an island in the Philippines, refusing to believe that the war had ended. He didn't just hide on the island, he continued fighting. The Imperial Japanese Army officer channeled his guerrilla training and alongside 3 other soldiers raided villages and killed as many as 30 people whom they believed to be the enemy. One of Onoda's compatriots surrendered in 1950, another was killed in 1954, and the third was shot in 1972. Despite being declared dead in 1959, Onoda stood his ground until 1974. When he returned to Japan in 1974, he was welcomed as a hero. At the time, he said, "I was fortunate that I could devote myself to my duty in my young and vigorous years." While he was in the jungle, the only thing on Onoda's mind was accomplishing my duty. He had, after all, been promised by his commanding officer in 1945 that it may take 3 years, it may take 5, but whatever happens, we'll come back for you. And there you have it, 11 oddball facts about World War II. Which of the 11 had you heard before? What was something you'd never heard in the past?
Ooh, that's a new twist. I never heard that before.
Tell us below in the comments and tune in tomorrow for more oddball facts and history. See you soon.